I wanted to show off my t-shirt before I sat down. It gets all crumpled and it's a bit small around the shoulders as well. And my Birkenocks. My Birkenocks, what do you think? I'm in a silly mood, my dear. But I was thinking, yesterday, as we saw the white smoke come out to announce the election of the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. I was watching it more or less live, actually, as it happened, on YouTube, and I've been to Vatican City, so I know the area, although I've got no interest in the Pope, really, or any affection for any individual Pope. So it's not about the person, or not about any particular religion, but one couldn't help but get swept up entirely in the sense of occasion, and the theatre of it, and the drama and the romance of it all, and I found myself moved to tears. Not quite as blubbery as I was for the King's coronation and the moment of the anointing with Zadok the priest. That will be unrivalled, I think, throughout my life. But, I was still very moved, very taken away with it. And I will always find it intriguing and fascinating, that moment of transformation from the mundane to the magical. An ordinary man, a priest, is brought out to the crowds of billions and billions and gazillions and is transformed, in this case, into something representing the divine, a lightning rod for 1.5 billion of the population of the world, a humble Chicagoan who will now be adored and cherished and kissed by the great and good and the peasants and the paupers. And throughout my life I've had this fascination not only on the grand stage but also in pop culture. Especially, I think it probably all kicked off with Sandy in Greece. Wasn't that an amazing moment when she rocked up in her stilettos and a cigarette and sexy black spandex and gave Danny Zuko a big fat old hard-on? Wasn't that a wonderful moment? And didn't we all want to have that effect on the boys, ladies? Of course we did. And who could forget old Plain Jane Harris of Neighbours? The school geek, nobody to go to the prom with. Then all of a sudden she removes her spectacles one day, throws on an 80s frock, and Moody Mike is absolutely enamoured of the gal. Goosebumps gives you the goosies. But it's her co-star, Kylie Minogue, that's given me one of my favourite moments of transformation from the squeaky clean girl next door, bubble-permed and bubblegum pop, re-emerging a few years later after many years of derision and criticism as a bona fide icon of cool and on the cover of the Face, just to prove it. Another moment of magic and reimagining. And I suppose you could say it's been reflected in my own experience and my own life. The boys at school didn't know what to do with me, my dear. What do you do with such a pretty face and such androgyny that one is not supposed to be attracted to? Well, of course, there'd be threats of violence and attempts at mockery and humiliation, although I always got the better of them by wielding my words and my acid tongue. And then, of course, after school, I debbed in London. I debbed on the scene, age 17 or 18 in London, and immediately was hailed as a beauty, of course, you understand. And all of a sudden I was the cool thing. And so one returns to the village, and, immediately, all of a sudden, they no longer want to slap me. They want to... And I let them beg. They beg to this day. All right, I'll probably let one or two of them have a go, but the rest of them, they are still begging. Then, of course, there are the destructive types that seek to destroy magic. And they don't believe in magic, and they're never going to know magic. And two of those are Daniel Graham and Adam Carruthers, who have been found guilty for the wanton felling of the Sycamore at Sycamore Gap. Well, today is the day of justice. Found guilty for felling that tree and damaging Hadrian's Wall in the process. Well, it turns out that Mr. Graham has a long history of troublemaking. In rural areas, he's been setting up his caravan in peaceful fields of the counties and creating a shantytown around it, and he's had lots of run-ins with the council over various planning permissions. He's been very aggressive to the local communities and a nasty piece of work by all accounts. And he seems to have found a hapless accomplice in the form of Mr. Carruthers, and the two of them are going to be sentenced on the 15th of July, and they show no remorse. No remorse. It's sociopathic, if you ask me. It could be the first time that a jail sentence for such an offence has been issued, but I'm not holding out any great hopes for that. I do hope that they will be made an example of. Because this isn't just the hijinks of teenagers we're talking about. They haven't even got the excuse of young age. These are two grown adults, remorseless vandals, because this was more than just another tree. Majesties of nature inform the rural landscape, as architecture informs the urban jungle. These symbols become silhouettes of our dreams, just like Catherine's rose. Unveiled today and named for the Princess of Wales to celebrate the healing power of nature and raise funds for cancer care, Catherine's rose is a richly scented flower with an abundance of petals in coral pink, and the perfume is described as possessing hints of Turkish delight and mango. You know, one of the places that does my coffee in the morning does a Turkish delight flavoured latte, and it's really delicious, too sugary for much consumption. But all it is really is syrups of vanilla and of rose, mixing the two together, and it gives off the wonderful authentic fragrance of Turkish delight in your coffee. There's a tip for you, my dears. Gorgeous. And £5 from every sale goes to the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity to help develop a unique training programme to improve cancer care. Catherine underwent chemotherapy treatment at the Royal Marsden last year, as you remember. Well, 15,000 are available this year as a bare root or a potted plant, and the rose was bred by Harkness Roses in collaboration with Catherine and the Royal Horticultural Society. And on the subject of Catherine, I sent out some cards for St. Catherine's Day when I was sending out mementos with my keepsakes over the last few months. Some of you will have received, as I've shown, French written postcards from decades ago for St. Catherine's Day. Now, if you don't know about St. Catherine's Day, it's also known as the Feast of St. Catherine, and it's celebrated on the 25th of November. Here's a card with Catherine stitched into it. Isn't it lovely? I love collecting some of these because they're so pretty. It commemorates the martyrdom of St. Catherine of Alexandria, who was beheaded in 305 AD, and it's also associated with Catherine of Aragon in the Lutheran tradition. It marks the arrival of winter, and in Great Britain it once marked the beginning of Advent, so it has multiple uses. It also goes by Catentide, and it was celebrated by lace makers, as you see in some of the cards, and also Catton cakes were baked for celebration, and the Catherine wheel firework evolved out of its inspiration. According to the Christian tradition, this Catherine was condemned to death when she touched the wheel and it fell to pieces. And all over the Francosphere, including parts of Canada like Quebec, the day celebrates spinsters. How delicious. It's customary in France for unmarried women to pray for a husband on St. Catherine's Day and to honour spinsters over 25 years old. They're known as Catherinettes. I absolutely love that. Perhaps we could rename the Catherinettes Waity Katies. The Catherinettes send cards to each other, and hats are made as they are crowned with St. Catherine's bonnet. Let's turn to the mucky business of Meghan Markle. Amanda Hirsch was the podcaster who received a condescending note from Meghan. Do you remember? Well, this week she has revealed what we all knew and what we had all guessed anyway, that all of this was a cynical marketing ploy, a business transaction, and nothing more. Amanda Hirsch has brazenly confirmed that she was told that the idea was Meghan's to send her this note that was received in March, but in April, Amanda was signed up to guess who? William Morris Endeavour, WME, Meghan's agent. And a couple of days later, she was receiving tea and jam from Meghan. So when we are told love is in the detail, Meghan, is it perhaps possible that one letter has been misplaced and that instead of D for detail and Duke and Duchess and Dunce and Devious, perhaps there should be an R in its place, not just for Rachel, but for retail. Love is in the retail. You are the merchantress of Venice Beach. And I'm so sorry to report that there has been even more bad press for Meghan. If you play with fire, you're going to get bird-lovey. And I'm talking about Robin Patrick, who has claimed that she has suffered catastrophic burns after trying out Meghan's bath salts recipe for Dan Martin. Do you remember? She put that bath salt extravaganza together for Daniel Martin, didn't she? I mean, you couldn't make this up. You couldn't make this up. But Robin Patrick has. And I should caveat this by saying that when I giggle and laugh, I'm not giggling and laughing at Robin's misfortune. I wish her nothing but the best, and I'm sorry this happened to her. But it's the whole episode, the whole affair, that is the stuff of comedy. Robin Patrick is throwing down the accusation that Meghan's bath salts recipe is flawed and dangerous and should have come with a warning. Apparently when Meghan was throwing it together on screen, she just said that she was putting in quite a bit of salt, but she didn't specify the quantity. And Robin claims that she suffered 18 burns, ulcers, and her body feels like it's burning from within. And she sent a letter to Meghan and to Netflix and Archewell Productions outlining her complaint for serious injury and PTSD after taking the bath. She's demanding $75,000 for her medical expenses, and get this, $10 million. 10 million smackers in compensation for reckless regard for public safety. Oh, they're coming for you, Harkles, they're coming for you. And Netflix for getting involved with this duo. But Robin says she's willing to settle out of court if the price is right. Robin watched Meghan make the salts using Epsom salt and Himalayan salt and arnica oil and lavender oil, which sounds harmless enough, doesn't it? Well, after plunging into the bath, she felt a burning sensation on her legs and her body, and she got out quickly, but the burning continued. She had ulcers on her lower body, and she stirred the water with her hand just to test what was going on, and apparently that got burned, with additional burns to her hand and her arm. She says that she's getting new blisters every day. It sounds like a horror movie, doesn't it, my dear? Absolutely ghastly. But before you get excited, and this is a big, big but, this claim may become a little less justified in the eyes of the law, because it appears that Robin is a diabetic, and she says, as an individual with an autoimmune condition and compromised immune system, compounded by diabetes-related dry skin on my legs and feet, I'm deeply concerned about the risk of infection, sepsis, or other complications. Well, Meghan's lawyer, sounds like mega liar, doesn't it? Meghan's lawyer says that there is no base for these claims. There's no case. They say the use of Epsom salts is contraindicated for individuals with diabetes except on the advice of a physician. As your letter recognises, a duty of care requires a foreseeable injury. It was not foreseeable that you would disregard the instructions on the Epsom salt packaging in attempting to make and use your own bath salts. For this separate reason, there can be no negligence claim against anyone involved with production or distribution of this series. Well, I'll be honest and tell you that if indeed there was advice given on the Epsom salt packaging, which one would think that there would be, then I absolutely do concur with Meghan's lawyer. In fact, it's a matter of common sense. Robin is aware of her own condition. And where does all this sort of litigiousness lead to? Do you understand? I mean, what are you going to have next? People coming for Martha Stewart or Delia Smith and saying, oh, I cut myself after I baked one of your cakes and was slicing it. One has to have some sort of sense of personal responsibility, or it's bad news for all of us. However, I am extremely curious to know if Meghan's famed sympathy and compassion extends to Robin, and if she has been in touch with her, with one of her fruit baskets and a fanny candle, in the scent of eau de mange, and of course brandishing her HRH initials, her vulgar credentials. I doubt it very much. And I'm extremely curious to hear what you guys think about this, because this week there have been many comparisons made between Meghan and Nicola Peltz, the girlfriend, or is it wife now? I can't remember. The amour of Brooklyn Beckham. Parallels are being drawn with the suggestion that Stockholm Syndrome is at play. Nikki Peltz is, of course, the daughter of a billionaire who won the heart of the offspring of David and Victoria, so-called posh spice. And there have been all these rumours of wedding dramas that she shares with Meghan, and all the wedding drama rumours surrounding run-ins with Catherine and even Princess Charlotte, and similarities with Nicola and the Beckham family, Victoria in particular, having these tugs of war around about the wedding, and then forcing the husbands to take sides with a sort of feeling of toxicity. And all these characters seem to have that histrionic bent, don't they? The thrill of the drama and the limelight and the hysterics and the behind-the-scenes gaggles of comfort in a sort of lusty whirlwind of romance. They find this sort of folie à deux partnership irresistibly sensual and lustsome and addictive. It's as if they are addicted to the adrenaline rush that they get from all of this. And in both cases, although admittedly I'm not as familiar with the Brooklyn and Nicola situation, I don't follow such adventures, But it seems that both Harry and Brooklyn are being reduced to influencers and their status diminished in the eyes of the world, despite what the likes of Harry might like to think and like to project. Diminished. Another handbag for the ladies' collection is all they seem to be. A puppy dog on a string. Pussy whipped. The D-Day commemorations continued. There have been lots of them this week. It's been fabulous. With a service of thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey, Charles and William laid wreaths at the grave of the unknown warrior, before their Majesties and their Royal Highnesses were received by the Dean and Chapter. Sophie looked splendid, by the way, didn't she, in this pale blue affair? By Bula, a dreamy concoction it was, a wonderful confection. Afterwards they met with the veterans and everybody was really chatty, and Catherine and William were doing us proud, getting on with everybody, being very affable. And Catherine did look lovely in this Alessandra Riche polka dot number that we've seen before. The Queen looked very good in a new Anna Valentine number, and the Royal Lancers brooch, which is always a joy to see. And their Majesties hosted the first garden party of the year at Buckingham Palace, and there were stormy skies and rain clouds aplenty, but I think the whole event was largely dry, so they had some luck there. The guests for the party are nominated by charities and organisations who are linked to royalty, and they're invited as a thank you for their good service. The Princess Royal was there, as were the Edinburghs and the Gloucesters. The King this time was in baby blue. Lovely waistcoat there, and the Queen was resplendent in a teal creation by Dior. She wore Queen Mary's turquoise and diamond brooch. Always lovely. Now, I loved the colour. I thought the Queen looked absolutely delicious. Her face looked pretty, and the whole thing overall was great, but I did not think that the fit or the cut of the dress did her any favours. It made her look shapeless, and it was unflattering, and to my eyes matronly. Other cuts look much better on the Queen, but lovely face, lovely hat. And I didn't notice the other day, but when Her Majesty was wearing red and she looked so gorgeous when they were out doing the poppies, I didn't notice the wonderful gloves that she was wearing. Aren't they absolutely fabulous? By l'Atelier du Gantier. A fabulous touch. Compliments to the wardrobe team. On this occasion, Sophie was wearing Erdem Violetta in ivory, a moneypenny bag, and her Prada pumpies. And then, come eventide, the entire family were out again, in force, for a concert on Horse Guards Parade. They all looked absolutely fabulous. The Queen and the Princess contrasted in a ravishing black and in a white. Catherine this time in self-portrait, boucle and chiffon, with pearls and a Chanel mini-flap. I love the updo, and even the bow, and I am not a fan of bows, as you know, my dear. I'm not one for the pussy bow, but she carried this one off with aplomb. Love the updo, Catherine, love it. I love her hair down, of course I love the look of it, but I hate it when it flaps all over the place and she's playing with it all the time. You know, I can't bear all of that. So, yeah, hoist it up, it's royal, Take the ticket from Annie, from our darling Princess Royal. But there were performers, musicians and tributes. I mean, I wouldn't enjoy it, my dear. I'd find it extremely dull and rather boring. But it's good for the crowds and the peasants and the paupers and the hoi polloi. They lap all of it up. So the rest of us and royalty just have to indulge it and sit through it, my dear, and try and have a good old time and down some drinks. But, you know, there was a fly past from the Lancaster bomber, and that put everybody in the spirit. The King had a fun time as he boarded a hybrid Thames clipper and met employees and apprentices as he travelled to the Thames Tideway project. Colloquially known as London's super sewer, the King saw first-hand benefits to biodiversity, including 71 trees and 3,000 plants, on Basil-Getty Embankment, the largest of a set of new public spaces which cover the underground infrastructure. His Majesty was introduced to a team of construction workers and unveiled a plaque to mark the completion of the Thames Tideway Tunnel. And the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester have been in Denmark to attend the commemoration of the liberation of Denmark in 1945. Their Royal Highnesses attended a service of thanksgiving at Copenhagen Cathedral and joined the Danish royal families, laying a wreath to those who gave their lives. They were a picture of impeccable royalty, a lady and a gentleman. Do you remember them, my dears? Ladies and gentlemen? Something of a rarity these days. Well, they're exemplified by Dickie and Gitty Gloucester. Wonderful. And there's our Daisy Denmark. Looking wonderful, isn't she? She abdicated last year, of course, did Queen Margrethe, cousin of the late Queen Elizabeth. Although she was actually hospitalised after this photo was taken on Sunday, a few days later, with a cold, so she's just in as a precaution under observation. We wish her very well, don't we, my dears? Speedy recovery, Queen Margrethe, our dear Daisy Denmark. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do. I love that woman. Absolutely love her. She's fantastic. And we all remember, don't we, what she did to her grandsons? Stripped them. Stripped 4 of them of their titles, their prince and princessy titles, and their HRH styles. Yes, she just stripped them from her own 4 grandchildren. So let that be a warning to the wayward rankers of Little Taj, California. Are you watching? Are you listening? Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Stay fruity and always on royal duty. Toodle pip.